What's going on, guys, and welcome back to another episode of Between Two Beards. Today we are joined by Dark, one of our friends from over the pond. Today we're going to mix it up a little bit. We're going to be running a 15 freehold while we get into a little bit of the nitty-gritty on DKs moving into Shadowlands. So Dark, thank you so much for being with us today. And let's get this rolling.
Mates.
By the way, correction, you guys are running the 15 freehold.
Yes, we are dragging you through the mud, kicking and screaming.
Have a 300 item level Fury Warrior with 142 item level weapons. Absolutely sad. At least my transforms don't.
I'm so keen.
So, Dark, kind of the way that we do things here is looking at where they were, where they've been, where they are, and where they're going.
Yep.
Different classes. So, how long have you been playing a DK? What really got you into it?
So I started in MOP was kind of when I started loosely playing Blood. Just watching Justice die.
Yeah, just stop releasing, bro.
I'm sorry. I'm just gonna sit back here. I'm just fucking nuking the time by dying. It's just sad.
What did I say about 60 seconds?
I actually I started off playing a warrior in vanilla, and I lived on a warrior as a main for a long time, and then I ended up sort of moving to DK slowly from Cataclysm and then MOP when challenge modes are out. The Blood one was sort of one of the best looking ones, so I sort of started playing more Blood DK then. And then through MOP? What come after MOP? Warlords.
Warlords, yeah. Nothing. There was just a void in the game for a couple years.
In Warlords, I started playing Blood DK a lot more as a main, I guess. And I don't know. I really enjoyed the sort of the gameplay side of how a Blood DK was different to playing a warrior tank for so long. I don't know, I kind of just, I don't want to say gravitated towards the spec, but I just enjoy the way the tank played, and I kind of just stuck with it from there on as a main.
So did you, were you a prot warrior, I'm assuming? Has tanking always kind of been your niche?
Yeah, so when actually in vanilla I was a arms warrior, and then by the end of Blackwing Lair I ended up being a fury warrior, and then I started tanking through sort of Encourage, and I just, yeah, I don't know, I always had this thing about main tanks. In vanilla, when you came across somebody that had, in the middle of Ironforge that was sitting there in Wrath with Thunder Fury, it was kind of this big rockstar vibe kind of thing, seeing that, and I don't know, from that it kind of just, it stuck with me as something I always wanted to be, was a main tank. So
well, now yeah, it's kind of the same way now, except it has more to do with rarity. It's like the last of the tanks anytime you see somebody pop into queue that has a tank spec.
Yeah, well, they're rare in Dying Breed now, which I don't know if that's just if that's more of a community aspect. I think people, I mean, I'm a bit of background sort of from me is I generally try to make, I started out making tank or challenge mode guides, because my big thing with this game was I wanted, it to be accessible to everybody in regards to content. Like if you want to do challenge modes, I wanted to try and help people feel like they could do challenge modes, not that it was this locked out thing for something scary. And I think one of the big problems is people are genuinely too scared to tank.
They are. There's a lot of pressure behind tanking.
Well,
as a rule.
It's interesting because, so I know that there's a lot of people, especially the people that aren't into like the real minutia of a class, like to just see that DPS meter. They like to see it spike, and especially in an expansion like we're in now, where there's actually so much output from tanks. It's just surprising to me that more people don't play around with it. But I do get it. It's Mythic Plus is getting bigger, and there's a lot of responsibility in Mythic Plus on tanks being well versed in the route that they have to take and whatnot. It's a lot easier to kind of just get dragged along as a DPS.
I think that's the biggest thing that I've had feedback from, is people being, if they're the tank, they're expected to know the route and exactly what they're doing, and people either don't want that responsibility or just don't know where to go with it, sort of thing.
An opposite side of the coin too is like when you're trying to, that's terrible. When you're trying to like, go into a pug, right? Which is what a lot of people and why they hunt IO scores, like so they can keep pugging content because maybe they don't have a group to play with, right? And like I can't tell you how many times like even Scott and I have just like, okay, let's just get a 15 down to this character. We'll invite this guy, and the tank just leaves in the middle because of, like how we accidentally did this one thing or this one thing happened, and
I will say it's been a huge gripe on because every now and then I go and read the Blizzard forums just to see what's going on, and you know, one of the biggest gripes on the WoW forums is always that there's zero punishment, and even WoW Reddit, there's no punishment for Mythic Plus leavers, so there's no like you know, disincentive for people to not leave keys if it's going poorly. Like you just leave, that's it. No one knows that you've bailed on someone's key just before the last boss or anything like that. And don't get me wrong, I don't know what the solution to that is, but it's a huge gripe with the community. People just bailing out on keys.
It's so interesting, you know, when you have something like that, or the lack of something like that in a company that has a system built in to punish leavers and competitive content on Overwatch. So I mean, it's not like they're unaware or unfamiliar with like the appropriate way to handle that. And yes, I get the hesitancy, especially with as much kind of cross server, cross region play. People have more, I would imagine, probably more latency or disconnect issues in Keystones than they do in Overwatch. And so maybe they don't want to punish people for getting disconnected like they do in Overwatch. But I mean, even still, it is definitely, it puts a big hamper on the whole experience when you have somebody that just presumes you know exactly the way they want to move. And luckily we've got so many great mod developers out there that have been able to design things like the MDI add-on that allows tanks to essentially establish the expectations, at least when it comes to movement and pack handling.
Not being familiar with those two, you'd be really surprised how many people don't use method dungeon tools or don't know about method dungeon tools. It's really interesting. We have so many amazing tools, add-ons and things like that, and I guess the promotion of them is kind of a hindrance to the community in the fact that they don't know about them. Like, people come in and ask about things in stream or on YouTube videos all the time, and they're like, you know, what is that? Where does this come from? And they just don't know, and it could enhance their, you know, their quality of life in game by miles, but they just don't know about it.
Yeah. Getting back to getting back to DKs. So what has you most excited about? You know, I've briefly looked over what changes we're anticipating for Blood DKs specifically, but DKs in general moving into Shadowlands. But what has you excited about? What enhancements or additions that they're making to the class?
Look, I never try and get too overly excited on the first sort of build of Alpha. At the moment, I think my biggest hope is that they just leave everything in a rather balanced format. Like, at the moment, I think tank balance is actually quite solid at the moment, and I hope they just don't blow anything out. With Blood DKs, we get Rune Tap is returning to baseline, which is a really it's a welcome thing. It's always nice to have another form of, you know, damage reduction in your toolkit that's baseline. But the biggest issue is that it's returned to baseline locked behind GCD.
That was going to be my next question. Is it a GCD cooldown?
Yeah,
Dude, I remember Blood Tap.
Well, Blood Tap's coming back as well, which is really good. The big, and again, I don't have Alpha Club, to be able to go and test this, but apparently the issue with Blood Tap is at the moment is that if you press it, it's really easy to cycle both charges off, and it will actually use both charges even if you don't have 2 runes to replenish. So you can essentially waste the charge of Blood Tap. So I mean, it's early days, so that stuff could get totally fixed up. But you know, I'm excited for what they're doing and hopefully where they're heading with the spec in this sort of regard. I'd really like to see Mastery come back and take some sort of more value for blood DKs. It always used to be, we used to have so many sort of modifiers to our Death Strike healing that Mastery really was a key stat for us, because Death Strike healed for so much. We got large blood shields off it, and because our self healing got reduced, we don't have as many modifiers around Death Strike anymore. Mastery's kind of really taken a back seat as a stat. So there's certainly no plans to do anything around that I've seen so far, but I'd really like to see something like that. But talents, like Talent Tree at the moment is in Shadowlands is actually looking, it's cool to see some of the stuff they've done. I don't think much is going to change though, is kind of the biggest glaring issue.
With just the class overall, or like rotation?
With your picks. So
okay.
Like at the moment, you boys want to do a scary double pull?
Yeah, let's do it. I'm down. Explosive for days.
Let's do this one. So at the moment, there's pretty much the only choices you really have is between your sort of your first row and then your last row. So at the moment with Heartbreaker and Blood Drinker, you'd swap, for Blood Drinker for single target, raid more often.
Oh no.
I just died right away.
Of course.
Well, I was like, I can try to kill him.
Can watch these nannies that are going off.
Oh boy.
No, we're okay. We're okay.
I believe in you guys. Obviously not you, Justice, but everyone else.
I'm trying to talk. I'm trying to get explosives. I'm trying to.
Dancing buff in the background is not working.
Literally, on the other side of the screen, our healer and our other DPS, Root and Neo, are not in Discord with us. But I could just imagine Neo going,
"What the?
Like, what is this? Why did he invite me to this? It was gonna be a good time."
I'm pretty sure that. Oh, did they just reset?
Did it really?
That feels bad. Feels bad.
That's not it. That's not the ability I wanted.
Oh, mega yikes.
Okay, we're still alive. We're still alive. No, we're dead. We're dead.
I'm LOSing these explosives, so I'm not in combat. I can res if you go down.
Just wipe it up.
Reset.
Wipe it up. So yeah, at the moment in the front row, you like for first row on BFA, you've got the choice between Heartbreaker and Blood Drinker, and then it's pretty much just like in the second row you're always taking Hemostasis, in the third row you're always taking Ossuary, in 4 generally 90% of the time you're going to be taking Will of the Necropolis, and then you have some choice at 75 with your slow or Wraithwalk, and then you're always taking Bloodworms, and then last row, you get to pick again between Bonestorm, Redthirst, and Purgatory. Not much is going to change in Shadowlands at the moment. Is the problem?
Well, so here's a theory. Do you think if they buffed any of those things that you wouldn't typically take, it would actually change the playstyle, or is it just like those things are just too fundamental?
Well, the problem is something like Ossuary probably needs to become baseline. So. Like, I don't know if you guys have had a look, but in Shadowlands, so they've moved Tombstone from row 3 to row 1, but it's now competing with Heartbreaker and Blood Drinker. So for Mythic Plus, you're still going to take Heartbreaker, and in raiding, you're still going to take Blood Drinker. I don't think Tombstone, it's a cool talent, but I don't think it's going to see, in its current state, any use over the other two.
For someone that does not play a Bloodbath Knight that much anymore, last time I tanked, and I did like all of Siege of Orgrimmar, was like,
yeah.
So it's been a while. What was Tombstalker?
So Tombstone is the consumed 5 Bone Shield charges, and for each, up to 5 charges, and for each charge that's consumed, what is it? You gain 6 runic power and heal for 6% of your max health for 8 seconds. So
it's kind of like overtime healing. It's like it's not necessary.
So it's not a bad talent. It's just, but it's competing with a single target DPS increase or an ability to generate more runic power,
which can
more damage, more sustain. So
and honestly, I think when Mythic Plus became a little bit more established thing, obviously when it became a took on more of a competitive platform, you do see not with you.
I'm getting percent under the bridge. Oh god.
You saw tanks become a little bit more. I mean, everybody, not just tanks. I mean, think about how kitty weaving became such a heavy thing for resto druids. Honestly, I heard more about it this expansion, but everybody's kind of dipping into each other's role so that they can more effectively, more quickly head through these dungeons with Mythic Plus. And then, you know, that kind of, I feel like, bled even more over then into Mythic rating. You know, you look at things like corruption. How much corruption can we stack before it literally becomes, you know, unsurvivable, or the healers are not able to maintain any longer?
The focus has certainly changed. I think from a tanking perspective, it used to always be about being tanky and staying alive and letting your DPS do the damage and things like that. Now the mindset has certainly changed a lot around to, well, if I kill it quicker, I don't have to take as much damage, and it's not it's not alive for as long. So that's kind of where the process for tank damages, we're gonna pull those rats, has really sort of morphed to, whereas it didn't used to have that kind of mentality to it. Oh god.
It's just the explosive song.
Yeah, it was like 5 of them in the back.
We need to pull them back. I think people were fighting them up near the obelisk.
Did we get any down?
2?
We're still in good shape.
Yikes.
We're still in good shape. We got this. So I think that's really changed as well, and some people really don't like that. Some people like the thing about if they're a tank, their job is to just stay alive. Where now it's very much your job to stay alive and contribute, you know, as much damage as you possibly can on that kind of survivability seesaw.
Well, and I like that actually a lot, because it's a testament not only to the player base and how smart and advanced players have become as we've moved forward, but I mean, if you look at for example, when Classic came out, how long it took people to get down Molten Core. It's a testament to the exact same thing. People learn how to enhance their experience in the game, and take on a little bit more of a diverse role in order to set themselves apart. Because
we've come a long way too.
Yeah.
Like you look at how crap we all were in vanilla compared to when Molten Cores come out now, and you know we're speed clearing it in 15 minutes.
Demon Hunters are looking for a strength trinket because they've learned that their haste allows them to do absolute nutty amounts of damage with that trinket, and that's the kind of like intuitive mindset that has bred the gamer that we know in World of Warcraft today, which is why you can never really go back.
Yeah. Dude, Warriors were even using agility in Burning Crusade. I remember that.
Oh yeah.
Like,
that was close.
Curse Vision Sargeras was the best helmet you could use. I had more agility leather on my warrior than plate gear.
No kidding. What was it for? Was it just
agility gave you critical strike?
Oh, no kidding. See, I was never a vanilla player, so I get to live in
Didn't Fury Warriors use Vash's Fang as well at one stage?
Yeah.
There was a dagger, sorry, not Fang, there's a dagger that dropped off Vash. I reckon that was an offhand for Fury Warriors.
Yeah, so it as an offhand because at 1.8 speed.
Yeah.
And so having that like crazy attack speed on your weapon for your offhand helped generate a lot of rage. Like I remember even like at the beginning we still used the dagger off Malkazar because of its like crazy low speed on it. And it kind of missed that aspect of the game of like looking after weapons and like seeing what their speed was and stuff and their DPS, and like I feel like I don't pay attention to that at all anymore. It's like, okay, this is the best one, cool. Like they did way more research and mathematics behind it, but then I could do.
I miss things like armor pen and multi-strike and reforging.
And... armor penetration was the shit.
Yeah,
I love
that. Was so much fun.
I love that stuff.
Well, and take you know those secondary stats and those additional stats that you can put on gear. They've kind of dumbed down the game a little bit. I know we were saying that the gamers have kind of stepped up and found ways to become more intricate with their builds, but like, you know, you look at things like we lost what was that PvP stat that we talk about? Resilience. Lost resilience, armor penetration, stuff like that.
Basically it's just resilient now. But...
Yeah.
I think they I don't want to say they've dumbed the game down. I think they've just tried to make it far less I mean, the hard, not that I want to say the hardcore audience, but it makes up I think it makes up a very small percent of their market. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think they've just tried to cater their game to, as you would as an organization, to their mass player base.
Well, and I've always kind of looked at World of Warcraft as they need to find a way to make the game more accessible, and that I shouldn't have said they dumbed it down, but that is, they've made the game more accessible in some of the changes that they've made, which is, we need that. We need to have a consistent drip of new players coming into the game to keep it alive.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
you're never going to make everyone happy too. That's the other thing. Like, you know, you are never, ever, ever going to make everybody happy. It's just not going to happen. You're doomed if you try.
Yeah.
Okay, so I know this is not about Death Knights or Shadowlands. I can attack the explosives while in the other realm, apparently.
Can you really?
Oh.
Big brain
strats. That's my favorite ball with getting.
You are just, that's all you're to do is stay in the Shadowlands and kill the explosives. That's pretty cool. Incoming Banhammer.
Target them. That's it. I can't actually attack them.
Okay.
Okay.
So yeah, I kind of feel like I should go back to the talent tree changes. Sorry.
Go ahead. Go ahead. Sorry.
So what else have we got? Like on Road 2, it's the same lineup they've buffed. I had a bunch of notes written, so I'm not going to remember this off all of my head around the talents and what they've done. But they've buffed consumption. Again, I think it's on a shorter cooldown, and it heals for 100% of damage done at the moment, and it's going to heal for 150% in Shadowlands. I don't think that's going to become a pick over Hemostasis. Like, Hemostasis was our best legendary, and then it got baked into a talent, and it's the reason that you would not take that. I can't find one. The best thing about consumption was obviously Vampiric Aura in Legion, which was group leech, but that was beyond the realms of busted, and I kind of feel like if we got Vampiric Leech back again via consumption, it would revert Blood DKs back to being this busted Mythic Plus tank again, which I don't think anyone really wants, like, as a Blood DK. Even I don't really want that. Like, I'd much prefer balance.
Yeah.
So
it'd be like the cool line, like, oh cool, you play a Havoc Demon Hunter.
Yeah.
Well, because then it becomes, if it's busted, it becomes the fad. I mean, it's something people play while it's busted, and then they complain when they change it, and also when they have to, like, do those heavy nerfs. It's a pretty radical change in, like, your overall gameplay, like how you have to interact with your class, and having to figure that out mid-tier, God forbid, is it's damaging.
So I don't think that'll get a pick. Rapid Decomp, I know that got a buff as well. You get 50% extra leech healing off Blood Plague now, which is the blood disease you apply to everything, which doesn't leech for that much anyway. And I'm not sure if there was another change to maybe Rapid Decomp's damage. It might have just been the extra leech, but again, that's not going to get picked over Hemo either. So, you know, it's cool to see things getting buffed, but if it doesn't come with any sort of meaningful change behind it, then it's kind of like, that's cool, but I'm not going to do anything differently. We got a new talent on the third row, which is Relish in Blood. The big issue with Relish in Blood, though, is I kind of think it does the same thing as Foul Bulwark, and it encourages bad gameplay around just pressing Marrowrend and trying to stay at 10 stacks of Bone Shield, which is just kind of a waste of runes, and it hammers your runic generation, which, you know, is going to hurt your self-reliance, your damage output as well. We all here. Here we are, cool. So
oh no,
also he's just,
I'm gonna have to res him. he was drinking or something like that. He was getting pelted with rocks. And Ossuary is just so strong. Like, Ossuary, you know, it gives you extra rune power. It gives you the ability to bank 3 death strikes, which, you know, for setup damage and things like that. Like if I'm thinking like Junkyard with the tank whack or whatever the hell it's called, it's too strong a talent to not take. And it also encourages really good gameplay around the fact that, you know,
You don't want to be death striking below 5 stacks of Bone Shield, and you don't want to be pressing Bone Shield above 7 stacks of Marrow Rend. So it comes with a really encouraging kind of balance of gameplay versus the other two, which I think will just see people wasting all their runes on Marrow Rends and then wondering, you know, why they're doing crap damage or why they're dying, sort of thing. So yeah, it's cool to see new talents, but if it comes with the same caveat where it's up against something you're not going to move away from.
Yeah.
What happens on the next row? Will of the Necropolis is still there, which I think is still going to be a default pick. Anti-magic barrier had its cooldown reduced, so it went to reduces by 20 seconds now instead of 15, which is good, and it absorbs 40% instead of 30% now. So it's a cool change for anything that requires, you know,
Is that something you ever used in Mythic Plus? AMZ?
No, not really. I mean,
so they're trying to like bump it to some degree, like, oh, now we can give it a whirl here.
I think it could see some use in raid encounters, maybe if there's something set up that way in Shadowlands that's, you know, really heavy magic focused, but right. Otherwise, no. And then Mark for Blood got a buff from 2% to 3% on its heal, but again, I can't see that getting any use over Will of the Necropolis either. Row 40 stayed the same, which is currently row 75, which is the choice between a slow, reduced cooldown on grip or Wraithwalk. Voracious got a buff. So Voracious Death Strike healing is increased by 20%, which is up from 15, I think. And you get your 15% leech for 8 seconds. That might see some play, maybe. Again, I don't know, and it's so early to tell.
Yeah.
Death Pact is back in, which I was racking my brain about this, and I have this amazing tool called Google, but I just didn't bother doing it. But I have a feeling that Death Pact was baseline in Warlords, but I can't remember, but I think it was.
Death Pact being...
It's heals you for 50% of your max health and creates an absorption for 30% of your max health for 15 seconds.
I thought it was as well.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was. What percent are we on? We're on 100%. We can just take this to the boss. So, I mean, it's a cool talent, but it's going up against Voracious and Bloodworms, and Bloodworms is our current default pick. The good thing about Bloodworms is it comes off your auto attacks. It didn't used to be auto attacks. They changed it. I'm pretty sure they changed it for BFA. So your auto attacks spawn Bloodworms. After a while, they explode. They heal you and they do damage. And the big thing that we were just
that was Legion too,
before
wasn't it?
Is right, dude. I can't honestly remember. It may have been. But I can't remember. But the big thing we were talking about before was tanks starting to maximize their role to be able to deal damage as well. And the good thing about Bloodworms is that you get a survivability component combined with the option to contribute some more damage.
Yeah.
So Bloodworms just becomes your default pick as well. And I don't think Voracious will kind of take that away. Or Death Pack. And then Purg, Red Thirst, and Bonestorm. Red Thirst got a slight buff. It's gone up from every 10 runic power reduces Vamp Blood by 1 second. In Shadowlands, it's every 10 runic power does 1.5 seconds, so that's welcome. But I don't think you're going to see much in the way of different picks. I still think you're going to be very standardized, like Heartbreaker, Hemo, Ossuary, Will, Grip of the Dead, Bloodworms, and then you pick for whatever content you're doing on your last row. So I'd like to see some change sort of come in, but I don't know if it will.
Now
I can get the first kick on this if someone wants to get the second one.
I'll get the second.
I'll attempt to. Okay.
Actually, I should have.
My only useful roll.
I got this one.
Okay.
All right.
Next.
Obviously, we have to touch on, before we wrap this up, we have to touch on what everybody's coming here for. Two-handed Frosty case.
Two-handed Frost is back.
Two-handed Frost is back. You know, any preliminary info on how that's looking versus one-hander, or?
Oh, I personally haven't seen. I'll be honest. Like, I'm a one-trick pony when it comes to I just play Blood DK, and that's pretty much it. I don't bother playing Frost or Unholy. I haven't heard much in regards to that, Justice? I don't know if you've heard sort of from anybody around.
From a few Death Knights that I talked to. Sorry, I've been cheating on you. They were saying some stuff like that it seems to have like the same playstyle as if you were using 2 one-handers right now. There's no real like benefit of like more resource gain or anything like that, or more ring power generation. Like,
it's an aesthetic adjustment then, right?
Right. So it seems like how that's going to play out is like, let's say you're playing a Frost Death Knight at the beginning of the expansion. You finally get your first good drop. Happens to be a 2-hander. Cool. So you're going to be a 2-handed Frost for a little while. Because it's going to be easier to get 1 weapon than it is to get 2. So the only benefit really would be that you could use 2 Rune Forges, right? So you could have 2 different weapon like enchants. Because you're going to be limited to 1 with being 2-handed Frost. Yep. So we'll like see how that really plays out. I would really like to see some kind of change to it. Similar to like how Fury back in the day had Titan's Grip and then Single-Minded Fury. So cool, Titan's Grip, you have like obviously increased damage, but you're also going to have increased damage taken. Like there's
they
some kind
play
of like
differently rotationally as well. Sorry.
Right.
Yeah.
Did they, or because I didn't play it? So did Single-Minded Fury and Titan's Grip play different playstyle wise?
It wasn't so much different playstyle wise. You didn't have different abilities or toolkit. It was that you prioritize different stats. So it's like you didn't need as much haste as being Single-Minded Fury back then because you had like an increased haste for being Single-Minded Fury.
Oh god.
And like then Titan's Grip was just like, okay, slow heavy hitting. And you needed to spec 4 haste because you had 2 3.6 speed weapons. So that was really all that changed up. The neat thing about it was like, okay, cool, I'm not so limited on like what weapons I can obtain. So like when trying to like farm for certain gear, it's like, oh yeah, actually I could go to this and I could go this spec. Like it opens up some variety and just like gearing up your character. That's really
I definitely think they need to come up with something to to make it feel like you're playing 2-handed Frost versus you're just playing, you know, Frost with 2 one-handers
like a primary ability.
Yeah, they could do it something like they have with Druids, where you have affinity type, whether it's 2-handed or 1-handed affinity, and it gives you, an additional unique ability that is very centric and focused when it comes to your playstyle. Something simple as that.
I want to think of like this slow motherfucker coming in, and if he happens to hit you, you're done. That's what I like for like a philosophy behind a Frost Death Knight. So I'd love it if like 2-handed Frost just had like a minor like haste increase to the weapons, and then one-handed Frost having like some kind of haste increase, and then 2-handed Frost having like either your weapon speed is like significantly slowed, so maybe you have like a 4.5 second swing speed, but the damage is increased by 30%. I'd be totally on board with something silly like that.
That'd be cool.
Like, and then like so it's like like every single strike like takes more power to do so, but it's gonna hit way harder. Just kind of add the aesthetic of the class. Obviously not a class designer or a game designer, but like in my head that plays out somewhat okay, and at least seems interesting enough to like choose one or the other.
Yeah. Now, out of curiosity,
I have a question.
Yes.
Am I lagged out? Or what the fuck is going on?
We're
showing. Oh, dude, we didn't do council.
We didn't do council.
Dude, you're the one doing 22s and shit. I was like, this is a new strategy. I'm not gonna argue. I'm like, that's fine.
Have I lagged out? Where's the box? I actually looked over there because they've got like a box that looks very similar, but it's smaller. And I was like, oh no, there's a boss still up.
I thought, dude, you're the champion.
Oh my god, dude,
like
I was just talking. I was just having a grand old fucking time.
Guys, below we'll have the link where Dark purchased his IO score.
Oh my
I'm
god.
just kidding.
The guy on eBay didn't tell me that this would happen. Oh dear god, hold on, I'm gonna have to get out this portal. Oh my lord. That's something.
Now,
yeah, that's something.
One question I've been getting from a couple different people, and I honestly haven't looked, so I don't know the answer. How do you know how they're handling Death Knights with regards to their starting level? I know that they're squishing it down to, I think, level 5, but do they have their own zone that they go through? Is it the same kind of scenario that they just revamped, or?
I am not too sure on that one.
Okay.
And I'm not sure if it was it level 5 or 8 they started at.
I think it was
5.
I know. I remember 8. So it's either 8 or they changed it down to 5 because 5 also.
5, yeah. I don't honestly know what they're going to do with the start. I have started a new DK with the Bolvar startup thing. So I'm assuming that's obviously as a result of, you know, Shadowlands incoming and things like that. So
I heard some rumors that they were changing like the starting zone for Death Knights.
Interesting.
Okay. Well, it's not the. Yeah. Well, I'm honestly not too sure. It's not the same old sort of pattern. You know, you now go and stand before Bolvar and sort of all that kind of stuff, where it used to be Arthas. So that side of it has already changed, but
so
I don't know if
is the quest line, because I haven't gone back and looked at it since they updated it, is the quest line essentially just substituting Bolvar for Arthas, or is it completely different now?
Well, when I did it, so I've been leveling. I've nearly finished leveling a Nightborn just for heritage armor. Yeah. So I had the start bit where I was at the Frozen Throne in front of Bolvar, and then I just went off into the world, did my own thing. Whereas the old way, you were kind of in Eastern Plaguelands, and you had to do the aspect.
Yeah,
you had to do all the Death Knight quests and things like that. You did not do that anymore. You kind of just went off onto your world and
ICC.
Interesting.
And there's a whole bunch of Death Knights kneeling, and you walk up to Bolvar, and he's like, "Cool, you'll be a champion.
Yeah, welcome.
Here's some really awesome transmog weapons that we just came out with. So
if
you do play Death Knight, congratulations. Go make another one and get some awesome transmog."
That's pretty much, I think, the start.
I would be really, really surprised if they didn't take this opportunity. Obviously, Bolvar is going to be a huge part of the next expansion. I'd be very surprised if they didn't find some way to refocus on him. And it'll be interesting to see what kind of class-based scenarios that dive a little bit further, deeper into the story of what's actually going on based on that idea.
Yeah, I think something else that we really should have mentioned that I only just thought of as well is we get DKs are getting 5 new runes as well, which is huge, which is really cool for rune forging. So that's something that's well and truly worth. Yeah, because we've had the same 3 like forever.
And it's, most we ever had was like 8, and then like 5 of them are useless, right?
Yeah, well, it's Razor Ice, Stone Skin Gargoyle, which doesn't see much play, and then Rune of the Fallen Crusader, and it's just kind of, you know, it's been boring in that aspect, I guess. Whereas now we're getting 5 new ones that are coming in, which is really cool for Shadowlands as well. So there's Hysteria, Sanguination, Spell Warding, Unending Thirst, and Rune of the Apocalypse. So hopefully that brings some ability for diversification in regards to playstyle, pools, content you're doing, because at the moment we just put on Fallen Crusader and then forget all about it, and then there's kind of that's just sort of it. So hopefully that brings, you know, in certain dungeons in Shadowlands, that gives you the option to do something different. But again, just sort of have to wait and see what's going to come from that. Rune of Hysteria looks the most interesting at the moment. It's fix your weapon with a rune that increases maximum runic power by 20, so you combine that with Ossuary, and then your attacks have a chance to increase your runic power generation by 20% for 8 seconds. So you would think in regards to survivability that going off, it's going to be, you know, really, really useful. So whether or not, if something like that comes in and it ends up just being the replacement for something like Fallen Crusader, I don't know. I hope there is some balance to them though, so you know, you actually get meaningful choice behind it. But again, we'll just have to wait and see, I guess. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for joining us, Dark. I appreciate the heck out of that. That was a solid key run.
I'm really glad I could do that to you. I ran right past them. I was looking at the talent calculator for Shadowlands, talking, and no one said anything. So I was like,
how were we supposed to say anything?
Dude, right? I was like, we're just gonna miss this key by. I was like, we're gonna miss this key by a minute. This actually wasn't too bad.
Not too bad for
died, and there was no box, and the mobs weren't. The mobs, like, I could run through them and they'd aggro. I was like, what the fuck is going on?
Yeah, no. Hey guys, thanks for checking out the episode today. If you liked what you saw, please be sure to check out DarkMechX on Twitch. His links, as well as Touchpad Warriors and mine, will be available in the description below the video. As always, if you have a second, please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe to the page. It helps us out more than you could know. Until next time, I've been RagingBeardedScot, and you've been Between Two Beards.